welcome everybody to another episode of the Cole Memo. Today we're having Illinois Representative La Shawn Ford on the show. This is a pre-recorded interview. It dropped yesterday for people that subscribe at colememo.com/Patreon. That's colememo.com/Patreon. It is free to join. But to get content first, it costs $3 a month, and occasionally I will release my content there first. We'll get right into the interview. I just wanted to say that I spoke to Representative Ford after the interview because I realized one of the main topics we discussed, which was the topic of hemp, otherwise known, as cannabis, that has that falls under the 0.3% Delta 9 threshold. I didn't ask whether or not he thought we'd see any movement on that policy this week, because of course the governor has made it or has seemingly, made it a priority. It's definitely been a hot topic in the legislature. And so I called him after the podcast and said, hey, sorry, one last question. Do you think there's going to be any hemp policy proposals this week? And he said no. But I want to stress, folks, that anything can change at the drop of the hat. Just to offer some other perspectives, I've talked to people on the ground that, first of all, don't see cannabis policy moving forward this veto session, which, by the way, started today and goes through Thursday here in Illinois. Today's October 28th, by the way, if you didn't know that. Happy 420. So what I'm hearing is that no cannabis policy is moving forward at all. And I'm talking about the regulated state marijuana industry and no policy for the federally legal hemp industry. And if you're watching, I'm using air quotes because you probably know that both of those terms are just arbitrary legal distinctions for the cannabis plant, the same plant. It's really silly. Again, any of this stuff can change at the drop of the hat, but from what I understand, legislators are focused on potential redistricting, energy, transit, budget, and more. And so for those reasons, it sounds like stuff will not move forward. I've heard from some sources that if we're going to see hemp policy, it will be proposed during the next legislative session. But this is just what I'm hearing. I want to reiterate strongly that anything can change at the drop of the hat in Springfield, Illinois. Without further ado, let's welcome back Illinois Representative La Shawn Ford to the show. Again, this is a pre-recorded interview that dropped first at colememo.com/Patreon. That's colememo.com/Patreon. Patreon, if I didn't spell that out loud. Thank you, everybody that's tuning in. I see you dropping comments. Here is the interview with Illinois Representative La Shawn Ford. All right. It's going to be a fun one today. I'll be joined by Illinois Representative La Shawn Ford. We'll be talking about his next steps in leadership, his experience shaping cannabis policy, and his advice for advocates as the movement continues to evolve. All of that and more right here on
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
the Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
Representative Ford, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
I got the memo.
You got the memo. That's right. That's right. Well, hey, I want to have you introduce yourself here in just a moment, but I do want to start by saying to the folks that are listening, I get it. Cannabis policy might not seem like the most urgent topic right now when you consider everything that's going on at the state and national level, but it is a topic that affects a lot of people. And even with the progress we've made, there's still plenty to talk about. So with that said, I do want to spend some time focusing on where we've been and where we're headed next. And to do that, like I say, I'm joined by Representative Ford. Representative Ford, for people who don't know you, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am La Shawn Ford. I'm honored to be a state representative in Illinois for the last almost 19 years, representing the west side of Chicago and western suburbs. That includes Oak Park, Forest Park, LaGrange Park, North Riverside, and other parts of the western suburbs. And I chair higher ed appropriations, and I've been a strong supporter of having a fair system when it comes to the criminal justice system, and making sure that we understand the damage that could be done from, outdated, antiquated laws. And so it's been great to serve, and I look forward to moving on to Washington, D.C. to do some work that the state level can't do.
Yeah. I was going to start with that. As you established, you've been in the General Assembly for quite a while now and recently announced that you'll be stepping away to pursue higher office. What went into that decision, and briefly, what are you hoping to focus on in this next chapter?
Well, things have changed so much, Cole, in America, where before we can fight for anything new, any policies that are important to our democracy, we have to first protect it. In my opinion, there's a lot of change that's happening in America. Some people like the change. Some people are afraid of it. I fall in line where I'm afraid of the change that's happening. And I think that it challenges our democracy when you see laws that have passed and that have been fought for being single-handedly removed from the books by President Trump.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, and I'll say this again before we go, I really appreciate your commitment to public service. So thank you, Representative Ford.
Thank you. And that's in the memo.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's just get right into cannabis policy. Again, I know there are much bigger things. You got bigger fish to fry, but because you have been involved in it over the past 5 years, I felt like before you stepped away, there's just no better time than now to get some of your insights. And so I guess before we get to cannabis, I wanted to talk about the last legislative session. There were some reports of heated caucus meetings over the subject of hemp. According to reports I saw, things got emotional, and even some of the governor's staff walked out in tears. What went down there? I know that it's a big subject, but what is going on with that?
I think that there was a debate that had to happen, in my opinion. You had adults in the room and people expressing themselves and their beliefs. That's exactly what our democracy is. It wasn't a public meeting. It was a meeting with staff and members of the House. And we were discussing the actual cannabis Delta 8 was the topic of discussion. And some people want to totally ban Delta 8 in Illinois, and some people want to regulate it and test it and tax it the way we do Delta 9. And so because there's such a strong feelings on both sides, it was a strong debate.
Gotcha. And I'm getting the sense, I recently saw Representative Buckner make some comments for, I think, CBS, and I saw Chris Welch make some comments after the last session. The comments by Buckner, Representative Buckner, were relatively recent. He indicated that the passion that comes around this topic are from the shortcomings of the cannabis law.
Yeah, it's the shortcomings of the. I didn't hear you say it's the shortcomings of the
cannabis law. Sorry.
I think so. Not just the cannabis law, but the overall understanding about all of cannabis, and letting one entity dominate the other. Some people believe that there should be only Delta 9 and Delta 8 there should be a prohibition. And that's where the problem comes. I think people have planted their feet and have drawn the line to say, I am for cannabis Delta 9 and I'm against Delta 8, period. And so that's where we have a difference of agreement. It's not that people are not knowledgeable about it. They just have their philosophy.
Well, and what it really seems to come down to, because I know Delta 8 is mostly discussed with regard to this subject, but like I've got this soda right here that was actually made by a social equity licensee. It's got Delta 9 THC in it, and it falls under the threshold in which this can, even though it has as much THC as you might find in a dispensary product, it technically meets the threshold to be legally defined as hemp. And so therefore, these people who, like I said, they also have a social equity license, they were able to send this to me directly through the mail, or I can go and buy it directly from their storefront. And it really seems like what this debate comes down to, you've started to see these products pop up in Benny's. My local gas station is carrying them. Target and Circle K recently announced they're going to start carrying them. And really what it seems like this debate comes down to is where cannabis is sold and who it's sold by. And it seems like in the state of Illinois, we've got this, approach that we're going to limit the number of licenses. And it feels like that's what this debate is about. It doesn't seem like there's any disagreement that and we discussed this in the past, Representative Ford, that, these things should be ID'd, there should be an age gate, there should be testing, there should be labeling. It doesn't seem like anybody disagrees on that. It seems like where the disagreement comes in is the idea that there would be more licenses issued, that there would be more open participation. And do you agree with my assessment on that? Is that what you're sort of getting is on the boots on the ground?
When you talk about the cannabis Delta 9, non-Delta 8, that's absolutely right. I think that social equity, individuals, businesses that actually got a late start in the cannabis business, but they've been in the fight from day one, but they haven't been able to open up a dispensary. And now that they're starting to open up, and the business is slow. And that's a problem. And they want to make sure that we don't continue to flood the business industry for cannabis with more licenses, because they haven't been able to open. They would like to get their businesses off. But then there's the sister of it all, Delta 9. And anybody that's in Delta 8, they want to get in and they want to be regulated. Delta 9 cannabis that's legal in Illinois will say that's flooding the market. They should not be allowed to come in and sell Delta 8 because we went through a lot in order to get our licenses. And if you allow them to come in and sell Delta 8, that's our direct competitor. And you should not allow it. Therefore, there should be a prohibition. They believe that that floods the market with cannabis that would be cheaper because it's not regulated and it's not taxed right now and it's not safe. So I think that cannabis Delta 9, the legal, understands that we need to do two things. We need to do one or two: ban it, a prohibition, or regulate it and bring it on par with cannabis in some way.
Yeah. And we'll move on to cannabis, but I just really want to drill down on this point. I agree that it seems like there are, I would even say there's three options. There's a ban, there's regulation. And the only reason I'm saying it in air quotes is it's like there's a debate. So the three prongs are ban, one form of regulation and another form of regulation. And I see the two forms of regulation, the competing interests being open licensing versus limited licensing. And like you say, the concern with open licensing from the perspective of some of the people that hold these licenses are that prices will get so low. And I guess I just return to, and maybe this will be a good segue to the cannabis law. Like if you read the first few words from the Illinois cannabis law, and I'm going off the top of my head right now, it's something to the effect of, and these are the first words from the law: in the interest of allowing law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime, we, the General Assembly, find that cannabis should be legal. And I want to emphasize, they wanted law enforcement to focus on violent and property crime. The way I look at this is, if we have a limited license approach, even if you're going to say that's regulated, I would call that a form of limited prohibition, because our mechanism of enforcement is the criminal law. And this has just been the issue for me. It's like, how can we say we're addressing the war on drugs when we've only handed out like a couple handful of licenses? And I realize the number is higher than a couple handful, but just bear with me. The criminalization continues. People that want to sell cannabis, the price they will pay is still the same price as before 2020. And that seems like what this debate is about, is like, I don't even think, honestly, many people want to sell Delta 8. I don't know many people that consume Delta 8. I think this is about being able to sell cannabis and cannabinoids, and the Farm Bill has just made it so that there's an alternative route. My last analogy before I pitch it over to you, it's almost like, back in the day, you couldn't get a taxi medallion, maybe from the city, but as soon as Uber came out, if you had a smartphone, you could become a taxi. There's nothing illegal. You're providing the same service, a ride. You're just not falling under that structure.
So I think that some people would think that we should not, if we really want to get rid of the traditional market, we should treat it like tobacco and just let it be sold like tobacco without all the licenses, and let the communities deal with it. But it's still federally illegal. And so because it's federally illegal, you have to have some form of hold on it. Look at what's happening with I keep going back to Delta 8. It's federally, it's not illegal federally,
right?
But there are some challenges there that they're looking at in the Farm Bill to possibly put it in the same category as Delta 9. And so until we're able to get the federal government to reclassify it, I think that we're probably doing well by keeping a rein on it. But we need to be more aggressive with making sure that those that have the opportunity to have businesses will be able to, the hardest impact should be able to join in this business. I mean, that's what it's for,
Yeah.
And so we hope that we get to the point where we can actually clean up the traditional market.
Yeah. And my last thought on this specific subject, I know that the governor and others have aired concerns about children with regard to the subject of hemp, and even past children, sometimes the concern has been, well, adults might be consuming something that they don't know what's in it. And my question is, why don't you think we're seeing any executive action to address that directly? I mean, in Texas, for example, which Texas, Representative Ford, their governor just issued a executive order to mandate age gating. So if you're going to sell hemp, you got to sell it to people 21 plus, labeling and testing. There's a few other caveats in there, but the legislature wasn't moving, and so the governor did. And I'm just curious if it seems like those concerns can be easily addressed, like I said, by those three things: age gating, testing, and labeling. Why aren't we seeing the governor take action on that if it's as high of a concern as he says it is?
That's a good question. And I urge the governor to deal with the age, because if the legislature, and I filed the bill, it's House Bill number 1. It's the most important bill and a priority of mine. It's House Bill 1, to regulate the age for those buying hemp products in Illinois. And so the legislature has failed to act on it. And if the governor has the authority, I would urge him to, I don't want to say follow Texas, but I would urge him to protect the children if he has that authority. One of the problems that I know has been a concern, and that is if we pass age, then we're actually, and this is not what I think, this is what I'm hearing from the advocates and the business community, that if we pass something in any form that's not full regulations, then we're justifying the existence. But my thought is, you know, we are going to be very shallow when we look at it that way, when we have children that could walk into a place and purchase Delta 8 with no regulations. So, you know, you take a bite out of it, one bite at a time. And I think that the easiest bipartisan win that we could get is the age gate. And so you're on point with that. And thanks for letting me know that Texas did something right.
Something, yeah. Minnesota is another state we could look towards where, like you say, marijuana, I'm putting in air quotes, is federally illegal, but hemp, I'm putting in air quotes because it's all cannabis, of course. These are just two arbitrary federal definitions. Hemp is legal at a federal level, like you said, and Minnesota is an example of a state that has codified that. That's why if you go to a liquor store, a movie theater, or Target now in Minnesota, you can find drinks with THC in it. And frankly, Representative Ford, and this is something that has been missing from the conversation entirely. Some of the largest companies in this state, you know, it used to be the narrative on this subject is that these are just random opportunists getting involved with hemp. Now, some of the largest operators in this state, Curaleaf, GTI, just to name two, you know, they're selling hemp now. Did you know that?
I know, yes.
Like when Governor Pritzker was recently asked about THC drinks being given out on the lakefront, those were from one of the largest companies in the nation and in this state. And so it's like, from my perspective, it almost just seems like you say, we need to just regulate this. Bans don't work. That's what we were supposed to learn from legalization.
That's right. Exactly. That's the thing. That's why I'm so against the prohibition. We've tried prohibition for marijuana. We've tried prohibition for alcohol. And look where we ended. We have in Illinois, we've gone against the federal government, and we said that we need to do something about the I guess the traditional market, because it's costing taxpayers way too much. Too many people becoming criminals over marijuana convictions, and taxpayers have to pay for the court costs, have to pay to lock people up. And so we actually said, not only that, it's bad for the consumer. People are out there buying marijuana and they don't know what they're getting.
You can't regulate what's banned, right?
Right.
I mean,
that's right. So that's why I am so opposed to the idea of even thinking about a prohibition on Delta 8. You can't do it.
Yeah. Well, we spent a lot of time on that subject. We'll move on. Thank you though for what for the work you've done on that subject. It'll be interesting to see it play out. I guess my last thought on it is just that some of the things that have come with hemp are some of the things that I think should have come with cannabis, like the idea that there is no possession limit. The fact that if you exceed your possession limit in Illinois, the answer is still criminal penalties. Not, like I think if anything, we could agree maybe a citable offense. I don't believe that it should be that, but it's like when it's a criminal offense, that just seems wrong if it's supposed to be legal. There's no concept like that with alcohol or tobacco. The only thing that's stopping you from buying as much as you want is your credit card.
That's right. You
You
know,
know?
that's a whole new that changes my perspective. I don't know how that when you talk about the fact that you can buy as much as you want, that does change my perspective. Um, because my thought was we got to be careful that people are not possessing to deliver. But who
Right.
says people are not buying all the alcohol to deliver?
Go to a tailgate.
Yeah,
What's going on there? People
yeah,
are doing,
yeah,
drinking out of kegs together and
yeah. And so if I think that the law is there, and if we could find a person that's doing it, then we could deal with that. I mean, you can't sell alcohol. Well, I wonder what's the consequences for selling alcohol. I think you're right. We should put provisions in the law, but that once again, that goes back to why we got to have amounts. Do you say that you can't sell? You can possess all you want, you just can't sell it. I mean, is there a limit that a person should be able to carry on their possession or have in their home? You say no.
I say no. And it's kind of interesting. Currently, I don't know if you knew this, but with the home grow laws, I confirmed this with our cannabis regulation oversight office. There is no limit to home grow. We just have to have any amounts over 30 grams secured
And
within
what
the home.
state?
Illinois.
No, that's new to me. I thought that we limited home grow.
Well, so you can limit 5 plants, but the
Right.
amount you get off of it, there's
Right.
no limit
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
harvest.
Yeah.
We're called what's called a keep what you grow state. So okay, well let's shift gears to cannabis completely now. You were part of the legislature when Illinois passed adult use legislation. Um, Representative Ammons has been on the show in the past. She gave a really passionate speech, and you know what? You were right next to her. You gave her Kleenex because, again, it was very passionate. It's one of my favorite speeches, in fact, because it seems like she predicted everything that we've seen. I almost wish she was wrong. We haven't seen much progress since 2019. We've not seen very many updates. There have been a few, but we've really not seen an expansion in our cannabis policy. Why do you think that is, and what's been holding us back?
Well, I would tell you that when you have a program that's working for you, then you're going to fight to keep it the same. So the industry founding business owners, they're making money, they control the industry. And so, in my opinion, what I've experienced is they fight change. And because they fight change, there's a strong lobby against any new change to the cannabis law, because any new change brings forth a little more justice and fairness in the industry. And so everything that I've tried to do to amend the code has been fought against by the big industry. The last bill that I passed was to get more licenses for social equity, and that was a success. And more because of that, we have more Black people and brown people and women with licenses, especially Black people had none. And so because of the law that I worked with the industry and the social equity groups, we passed a law to get people licenses. And because of that, I get thank you notes from those Black people and brown people saying, had it not been for the work that we did together, they would not have had their licenses.
Yeah.
And so I think that you also have the strong, I blamed it all on the big industry, but I think that the social equity would say, just change the law to make it more fair for us, reduce the burden of all of the government regulations so that we can afford to be in this business, and slow down new opportunities for people to get in the industry so that we can scale up. And so I think changes to make it more fair is what social equity want. And those that are doing well in the business, they would say, leave it alone.
Makes sense. I mean, to your point, the state Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office produced a study, and the study indicated that not $1 of sales was documented as going to Black or brown owners when the study ended in 2023. Instead, white male owners took in 78% of recreational dispensary sales and 91% of grower sales. Like you said, if the system's working in your favor, maybe you fight to keep the system as is.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. And I think that anyone that's in business understands that's business. And so for all those that are got into this industry thinking that it was really going to be like winning the lottery, it really was winning your chance to fight for survival.
Right. Yeah. A chance to succeed, or sometimes as business happens, a chance to fail, as long as you have a chance. And that's kind of why I'm pushing for open licensing. A brief departure. I just wanted to give some figures that I found. I was looking for this earlier when we were talking about possession limits. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be like a possession limit, but I think there should be some parity. So to give you an example, roughly 100 joints, if you had them, Representative Ford, would be a felony. But you don't hit felony territory with cigarettes unless you're moving like 1,000 unstamped packs, which is 20,000 tobacco cigarettes. So 20,000 tobacco cigarettes equals felony. 100 cannabis cigarettes equals felony. It's like there just needs to be some parity.
Yes, I agree. That's how you deal with best practices, and that should be that we learn from other states and we learn from what works, and we should look at how that will be more fair.
Yeah. So anyways, like I say, brief tangent. I wanted to ask you, should advocates stop pushing issues in omnibus packages? I'm just like, it seems like what happens is too many issues get packed together and then somebody can kill the entire bill with a small qualm.
I think that if we're not going to have real honest negotiations, then we need to get what we can and compromise on small gains. Like you said, immediately for the age gating, we need to do that right away. We know we could pass it, singly pass it. We should, if we have to allow for expansion of the cannabis space, we should all agree to just pass that singly. If we agree that we could pass a bill that will allow for conditional license holders to bring in investors, we should pass it. Because when you have a contentious issue like this, the more change you add brings more opposition. So going the long way, coming right back at you to your question, it might be the best approach to do single one-offs, because it's easier to get a compromise and a deal done when it's not as complicated as multiple issues in one bill.
And do you have any advice for advocates, small operators, or just everyday consumers on like how best to push those single issues? And I know it's kind of a vague question because we're not talking about any single issue, but people have been failing, I guess, to push. I don't want to say failing, maybe that's a strong word, but it's not inaccurate. For the last 5 years, we've just not seen any movement. And so I'm just wondering, before you step away, do you have any advice for people that are trying to get policy past the goal line?
I think if you're impacted, I think you should file your bill. You should get someone to file your bill, and you should actually work your bill and get 60 members of the House to say, yes, I will vote for that, and get your bill on the board. So there are transporters that need something, conditional license holders that need something. You have the current businesses that's open need something, and each one know exactly what they need to be successful. They should actually file their bill and work it in the House of Representatives so that they could get the 60 votes necessary to put it on the board for passage.
And do you have any advice specifically for consumers? And the reason I ask specifically for consumers is because, you know, these businesses, they oftentimes have lobbyists, or I mean, it's just, you know, it's part of their business to come and lobby in Springfield. So whether or not they personally have lobbyists, maybe they come down and lobby themselves. Consumers like myself, fortunately, I'm pretty privileged. I've seen you in Springfield enough, you know, a few times. And so I'm privileged to make it down there, but many consumers aren't. Do you have any advice for consumers? You know, we're not pushing a business interest. We're trying to push basically for, you know, continued decriminalization, better access, stuff like that.
You know, I think that if you are a consumer, you are the best lobby. So what's important now in this process that we actually have the ability to testify virtually.
Right.
You can put your name as a proponent or opponent, and it could be seen online. And so you could make yourself known in this process and your position known in this process if you are willing to just put in the work. I mean, I think it's a nice process. We come a long way in Springfield of knowing how to giving people more access to participate. So yeah. I'm excited about the way people could participate, and COVID gave us that opportunity to rethink about how we can engage the voters.
Yeah, I will say that has been nice to have that flexibility. We'll start to wrap up here. I want to be mindful of your time. I just do have a few more questions for you before I let you go. Do you get the sense that other members of the General Assembly are aware of the shortcomings of Illinois cannabis policy?
You know, I would say that people have picked sides, and that's where they are. I think that they have picked sides in this process, and that's why we may not have seen too much of change, because lobby is strong.
Yeah. I can't.
Sides.
Right. I can't help but wonder how we get recharged energy around this subject. It seems like a lot of people look at it and they're like, well, there's a weed store down the street.
Right.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it is a big deal. You know, in my opinion, it's a big deal because that person that actually what they did to exactly become that business owner is huge. The money that they spent to become a business owner and the regulations that they have been fighting is huge.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, like one thing that I'm not sure that the legislature is aware of is, like, the Chicago Tribune has reported, and the University of Illinois recently did research to find that arrests continue for cannabis in areas where dispensaries aren't. So like the south side of Chicago. And again, it's like, how can we say we've addressed the criminalization of cannabis when you've got facts like that?
Right. Now that is new. I had not read that.
Yeah. Happy to share that data with you
yes.
and other members. But
yeah, that's great. I need that because to know that we did not hit our mark in that area is troubling, based on that means we missed the mark in many ways. We didn't bring people into the business like we said we were going to do. And then we still have more convictions in those same areas. So the war on drugs continues, even though we claim that we were cleaning up the justice and it all. And so I look forward to reading that.
Yeah. And I recently spoke to the University of Illinois, and I encouraged them to continue digging into that. So maybe we'll have more data. They said they were going to look into it. So we'll see. Okay, well, I think I could talk to you all day, but again, I want to be mindful of your time. My last question, and then I'll let you head out. A lot of advocates have been calling for things like home grow for all of adults, opening licensing, which we already talked about, so that more businesses can actually compete. And other people have talked about creating true craft or local markets, where it's like, I guess just to put it this way, Representative Ford, as a cannabis consumer, I've never had an issue buying cannabis.
Right.
My only issue was that I was looking over my shoulder because I was concerned that my livelihood would be taken away. That was the only issue.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, do you see any of these ideas like home grow for all adults, opening up licensing, or creating like farmers markets for cannabis? Do you think those are too far off politically? Do you think I've got my head too high in the sky? Or do you think these could actually gain traction in the future?
I think it all depends on federal regulations.
Okay.
That's where I think it boils down. I think that this is a, no pun intended, budding industry. And I think that with revenues being, state revenue budgets being challenged, and, you need money for transportation, you need money for healthcare, you need money for education. States are going to be looking for ways to safely bring on new businesses. And I think that you want to be careful because it's still federally illegal.
Makes sense. Well, here's to hoping we do see some progress in the future, Representative Ford. I know you're about to step away from state leadership. I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me today and for always being so approachable. I've had the chance to meet you in Denver, in Chicago, in Springfield, and every time you've been so warm, welcoming, and kind, and I just really appreciate that. I know our listeners do too. So thank you for that. Thank you for your public service. And please, let's keep in touch. It'd be cool to have, an interview with a representative at a federal level. Once
you got me. I would love to get Cole's memo anytime. It's good. I appreciate you being dedicated to your craft and focusing on issues that's important. I think that having the actual boots on the ground type of reporting and people that ordinarily wouldn't get interviewed by mainstream media, and you're introducing them to the mainstream media, is what America is about. And so right on, keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thank you, Representative Ford. And like I say, let's keep in touch.
All right.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandums. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
All right, folks, we are back and I'm on screen and I hope you're doing well. It is Tuesday. It's just past 5 p.m. and we just aired our interview with Illinois Representative La Shawn Ford. If you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe to my channel. You can stream the Cole Memo wherever you stream podcasts. What do you think about the interview? Did you enjoy it? I saw people commenting throughout. Baked Bot, thank you for your support, folks. Look up Baked Bot AI on the internet to learn more about the services they provide. Genetic Memory Farms, this is a kind comment. Thank you for the first comment. I realize you're saying that he's ignorant. That's your opinion. And I respect your ability to have that opinion. I was specifically talking about the second half of your comment where you say, Cole, you've been beating this drum and lawmakers have chosen to ignore you and your mini doc. Brilliant work. And if you want to see my mini doc, you can stream it right now at colememo.com/mini doc. I am going to take it back. I don't think that lawmakers are ignoring me or my mini doc. I don't think A, they're probably aware of me or my mini doc. But B, as I said before we launched this interview, there are much bigger things going on right now, including energy, transit, the budget, things at a national level. Kiana, I'd love it. I know that right now may not be a good time, but if you can call in, I saw you dropping comments throughout. Since you are involved in this process with Chicago Normal, would totally be open to your commentary on the matter. Not even, just if you want to come on and drop some comments, you can call in at colememo.com/live. It's super easy, audio only. You don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. Just offering if you'd like to come on. The platform's open. Dave, I just wanted to say thank you for this comment. You said you're super well spoken. I appreciate the compliment there. Again, Representative Ford has been on the show in the past. I'll put the last interview that we had on in the show notes, so check that out. Yeah, I hope that you found value in the episode. I enjoyed the conversation. I wish that I was able to have more time, but I wanted to be respectful of his time, and maybe we can have him on again in the future. I feel like there's still a lot that we could discuss and that we didn't get into specific to sort of the state level cannabis policy. I know we talked more about hemp at the beginning, but there's a lot going on in the state level cannabis policy that I've covered over the years, big issues, and we've not seen any movement on that. It seems like hemp gets the most attention. Genetic Memory Farm says, I would like to hear more from Kiana's viewpoint. Me too, Kiana, again, or anybody that's watching, if you want to call in, colememo.com/live. Would love to get the opinion of people actually in the business or, involved in advocacy. Dave, thank you for the comment. You said, I like that you pay attention to the real problems. Mr. Ford knows trigger words and speaks like a politician. I mean, he is a politician. And he's running for federal leadership, from what I understand, and he mentioned that on the show. So that'll be interesting. I do wish him the best of luck going forward, and like I say, maybe we'll have him back on before he steps out of his state leadership position, and maybe even potentially if he does take a seat at the federal level. From what I understand, though, he is retiring from state level politics, so this was his last hurrah. And yeah. All right, Cannon Man. I'll be honest with you. You're saying ignoring all my messages, huh? My friend. It's hard to keep up sometimes. But I think you mentioned earlier there is an event at the Wiener Circle in Chicago. It looks like you maybe have that as your banner. That's the High Focus Media events. Looks like you're saying that Chicago Cannabis Company, which the owner of that business has been on the show in the past, is having an event. Here is the details if you're wanting to go to that tonight. And so Kiana says she can't right now. We can do it another time if you'd be up for that. I was actually talking to Felicia Santiago the other day. I believe that's her full name. Felicia from Chicago Normal. I hope I didn't get her name wrong, but about having her on the show and the rest of you. I sort of sent an open invite. I don't remember how long ago that was. It had to have been like 3 weeks ago, which I think Friday was the first time I had posted a stream in 2 weeks. So I've just been away from things, but I'd love to get Chicago Normal on because I know that you've got some petitions filed for new conditions. I really thought that what you did with the conditions last time around was amazing, to say the least. specifically when the board pressed members of Chicago Normal on it. I thought one of your responses was brilliantly thought out, which is like, why oppose any of this? Like, as we move towards and continue to accept medical cannabis, why would you object to adding any condition? Because if you add more conditions, then you have more data and you can draw more conclusions from that data. And I just thought, like, I never thought of it that way. I think it was Felicia that said that. So, anyways, would love to have you all on to share your perspective, and I appreciate you dropping your perspective throughout this interview. We've got about 45 people tuned in right now between YouTube and Twitter. I think I also saw some people on Instagram. It's hard for us to hard for me to keep up with the comments on Instagram. Someone says, how can I get a chance to speak with you on Instagram? Well, call into colememo.com/live. How much longer you think this is going to go? Probably just about 5 or 10 more minutes. K and MJ Squared, thank you for dropping a comment. I feel bad for the last stream you dropped a comment, and like I watched it back after the fact, and it made sense what you were saying. But at the time when I'm live, sometimes it's hard for me to process things mentally. There's just a lot going on when you're live on the internet, and so at least for me mentally, I don't mean to speak on behalf of everybody. And so when you dropped a comment in the last stream, I didn't understand it. But I do appreciate you tuning in and supporting the show. And you said, I enjoy the social equity that Ford's hemp bill would bring. I do, however, think there should be a distinction between non-detect THC hemp products and THC hemp products. I think that's what you mean when you say ND. It's an interesting comment. Hadn't thought of that. Feel free to expand on that. If you want, I can throw it on screen. Dave, it's all good. If you can't call in, that's all good. But absolutely, I was just talking to Aaron. We'll get another 3 dope dudes set up. So stay tuned, folks that enjoy those shows. Those are always the best. Stacy, I'm guessing this is Stacy, says, again, I believe the move to protect privilege to try and shore up hard-won seats at the table, resulting in injustice. Think of all the non-marijuana license holders that have been hurt by the war on drugs. Exactly, Stacy. And this is what makes me most passionate about hemp. People on Twitter and stuff, they'll be like, whether or not they're even actually people, I start to wonder. But the trolls on Twitter will be, treat me as if I like Delta 8 or THCP. Like, oh, you're okay with this? And it's like, I don't know anybody who is necessarily looking for that. Whenever I talk to anybody that's getting involved in hemp, it's that, like this company, for example. First of all, shout out to Hemp Stock Farms, folks. Look them up. But just to give another example, this is a company that creates hemp drinks. They've got a social equity license, and they can send me sodas, and those are the parts that I think are cool. And I think we can address those other issues by requiring, if your concern is like synthetics and chemical byproducts or whatever, I think the answer is good manufacturing processes requiring GMP. Because in other words, like if it can't be sold in food, then it shouldn't be in cannabis. And I'm not saying our food supply is perfect, but it's a good place to start, right? And that's why I'm saying I think GMP seems like an answer to this. And I just want to continue on Hemp Stock Farms because this is like exactly what I was about to transition to. Hemp opens people's ability to legally sell cannabis. And that's why I'm most passionate about this. Like from a consumer's perspective, I like having more options to choose from and people being able to work their craft and stand out as small businesses. But Stacy says once people get theirs, especially if hard fought and won, which it is hard fought. I mean, she says it's hard to not fight to preserve that privilege. And that's actually where I do have some empathy for these license holders, where they have had a struggle too. And it's called sunk cost fallacy ultimately. And it's not easy to hear that, but basically you're like, well, if I put all of this into it, like I need to make sure I can get that back out of it. And if other people can get in with a lower barrier to entry, well, that's not fair. And I agree, that's not fair. But life's not fair sometimes. Again, the sort of taxi medallion, the taxi medallion versus Uber analogy, I think is great. And this is, Genetic Memory Farms. I'm glad I got you here. Like, I do believe hemp, despite everything else that's come out of it, is a net positive for cannabis. Again, like the fact that I went to the gas station the other day and bought like 24 cans, a couple 24 packs of hemp drinks. At the dispensary, I'm limited. It's crazy. And I know these are nitpicky things, but it's like, these are the things that frustrate me. I think Governor Pritzker was asked a few years ago at this point at the opening of Ivy Hall whether or not we'd have delivery from dispensaries. And he said he'd be supportive of it so long as, and I'm paraphrasing here, so long as it's similar to alcohol delivery and that, we ensure that the person receiving the product is in fact of age or of status, if you will, if you have like a medical card. He didn't say that specifically, but I'm just filling in the blanks. He said, as long as it's like alcohol and we can confirm that people are of age, he said he's okay with delivery. And it's crazy that hemp has solved that problem. You can get products that are for sale in dispensaries. Just to like, that's the blunt example I like to use. You can literally find products now that are on sale at dispensaries available on DoorDash. And I think that's a good thing. I think you should be able to get cannabis products from DoorDash or from your local retail storefront or from the gas station. People like this on gas station weed. It's like, I've said this on the show in the past, but I remember when they legalized it in Washington in 2012, for adult use, I called one of my buddies and I was like, does that mean you can like go and buy weed like at the gas station? Is it like behind the counter, like tobacco? And he was like, I don't know. But that's like one of my first thoughts I had when I had heard of adult use becoming a thing. And so again, it's like, I just want to be very clear here. I got into like a debate today on Twitter. Let's see if I can throw it up. Not that this matters, but somebody brought up like a THCP product and they're like, so this is okay. And I'm like, I'm not saying that's okay. I'm not saying I want that. I don't know anybody that does. I'm saying that if you're actually concerned about that, I don't know how you're going to address those concerns with a prohibition on the substance. If you're familiar with the iron law of prohibition, it's the idea that substances get more potent and more dangerous with higher enforcement. It's the reason that people don't gravitate towards natural alternative or natural options. Like, people used to like, I know I'm going to lose some people here, but hear me out. I'm going to give a few examples. Let's start with an example that's most digestible, actually, because I don't want to lose anybody. The reason that moonshine was so popular is because it was so potent. You could pack a lot into different mason jars and you could transport a lot. You could hand it out to people. They could dilute it, into different beverages, spread it out, higher concentration, lower volume, makes for great trafficking, awesome drugs. You didn't see a lot of people. I mean, people bootlegged beer for sure, but like bootlegging beer, you have to have the big ass fucking barrels. It's like a a much larger volume compared to the potency of the product that you're pushing. And so this is why you saw moonshiners really take off. Let's use some other examples. People that live in Colombia tend to use natural coca leaf. I know we had a guest on the show, Dana Larson. He grew his own coca in Canada. He was drinking coca tea on the interview I had with him. And one of these days I'm going to go there and do coca and a bunch of other drugs with him. But he likes natural coca. And most people, if given the option, would gravitate towards natural coca. Guess what is hard to import in mass? Natural coca. Because it's these leaves, it's very bulky. What's not bulky? Powder cocaine. You increase the potency, you decrease the volume, you pack that shit into whatever. Do people in the comments understand? Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? Let's use another example. People would typically, historically, use natural poppy, opium, heroin. Just like in the case of coca, poppy is very bulky. It's plant matter. How do you make that easy to ship and disperse? You make a chemical concentration of it. You call it heroin. Okay, we're going to crack down on heroin. Heroin's bad, right? Guess what came out after that? Fentanyl. And I think now there's something more potent than fentanyl. And it's like, I don't know, folks, maybe prohibition isn't working. Maybe it's not working. To use an example from cannabis, because Dave commented, cannabis concentrate is super popular in states with prohibition. Is that, in states with prohibition, concentrates are super popular because it's the same thing. Lower volume, higher concentration. You also have the perks of it doesn't smell as loud as weed, as some would say. It doesn't smell as much as weed, right? Genetic Memory Farm says, small point of order. During Prohibition, breweries made near beer, low to no alcohol, and then illicit retailers would add industrial alcohol or moonshine to restore the proof before serving. Yeah. I also think there was a period of time where, before Prohibition, people should Google this. I think it was called the Volstead Act or something like that. It reminds me a lot of hemp. They legalized low-dose alcoholic beverages. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I'm going off the top of my head. We're live. So I mentioned this earlier. It's stupid to even give this airtime, but we'll just display it because it's funny. I mentioned that it's a shame that we're seeing people that consume and or invest in cannabis try to shut down some of the good things that have come with hemp. Again, I think you take the best and leave the rest. Leave the bad things out of hemp policy. Jamie Campbell comments and says, did they fight for this too? Is this normal? And it's some THCP product with THCVII. I've never heard of these cannabinoids. And it's just like, okay, so what's the solution? Because I've heard some people say requiring GMP would weed out sketchy chemical processing or byproducts. My concern is the iron law of prohibition, which is what I just explained to you all. And he said, as a consumer advocate that seems to focus more on price and access than safety, I can't see you getting behind what would come with GMP. Well, you've obviously not read my policy paper that I published on thecolememo.com almost a year ago called Take the Best and Leave the Rest, the Future of Cannabis Policy. And one of my solutions to the hemp issue was CGMP. So I am behind that. He says smart cannabis operators already adhere to GMP or are seeking certification. And I said, so you agree GMP would address your concerns? He says, a robust regulatory framework is necessary, and GMP is just one part of it. He says, as I'm sure you know, I don't see the need for synthetic products like these to even exist. I say I'm with you in spirit. Unfortunately, saying that they shouldn't exist doesn't make them disappear. I wish that was the world we lived in. So, Hemp Stock Farm said we would never peddle 7OH. Yeah, we've had conversations about 7OH in the past. Stuff is, that's an interesting subject. We're over an hour. We've not got any callers, so I am going to close out the show, folks. I hope you found value in this episode of the Cole Memo. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate you for dropping comments throughout. Maybe we'll line up something with advocates in space. I'm already working on lining up some interviews with some of the advocates in the space, but I think that, we definitely saw some comments in today's stream that warrant some further discussion. It sounds like, people, had some, you saw some comments that I displayed. So I want to make sure to give people this platform because that's what this is all about. Thank you, Dave, for tuning in. And folks, if you haven't checked out my mini documentary, it's a culmination of all of my work over the past 5 years. It covers the first, I think, 3 years of legalization in Illinois. I may or may not be working on a part 2. You can find the first. You can watch my mini documentary at colememo.com/minidoc. And if you haven't heard of it, here is a peek at what you can expect. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. Take care and smash that like button if you haven't already.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.